Welcome back. We continue our discussion with U.S. Senate candidate Leah Vukmir. Well, turning to some more issues of the election, you are critical of the way that Senator Tammy Baldwin has handled problems which plague the Veterans Administration, especially the situation in Toma, where a report showed patients were being overprescribed opioids. What changes would you make if elected?
Well, I am very concerned about how she handled that. You know, look, I'm a military mom, as you mentioned earlier. My son is a first lieutenant in the United States Army. I'm proud of him and all who wear the uniform to serve our country. And also as a nurse who has worked on the governor's task force on the heroin and opioid addiction problem. It's a serious problem that was affecting our Toma VA and our veterans. And Tammy Baldwin received a report from the Obama administration. She was the only person in the congressional delegation to receive that report that said that a doctor was overprescribing and that many veterans were addicted, and one veteran indeed died. And I find it unconscionable that she would have ignored that report. I think it's really important that we have people who will hold her accountable, and I will do that. What would I do? I've already visited the Toma VA recently, and I'm really pleased that they have understood a lot of the problems that are there. I have a veterans coalition of close to 200 or more veterans that are supporting me, and I think it's really important that we look at alternatives to opioids. And I'm pleased to see that the Toma VA is starting to incorporate that into their policies. And it's not just for the Toma VA, but in general as a medical community, and being a nurse, somebody who has continued to work in healthcare as a nurse through my years in the legislature. I'm seeing a sea shift and a change in medical prescribing, which I think is important. And these are things that we need to make sure that we continue to do at Toma VA, but in all of our medical facilities.
We have a large veteran population who fought in the Gulf Wars. Are we doing enough to meet their needs?
Well, I think it's really important that we continue to look for ways to help our veterans in general, and that's part of my Veterans Initiative. Looks at some things that even the president has incorporated recently as new changes in their choice program to give them more options and choices to find medical care. If right now they have to wait for 30 days or more to go to a facility outside of a VA. Also, it's based on random geographical locations. I don't think that's right. I think they should be given the opportunity to find the best care possible. And so I think we need to continue to go down that road in giving them the choices and options of receiving the care that will best suit them, given that they have done so much for our country.
And we talked in the break about your son, Nicholas, who is currently serving as first lieutenant in the Army, and you said recently finished Army Ranger School.
Yes.
How has his service shaped your support of the military?
Well, obviously, this is a young man who, since the age of 10, when 9/11 happened, I knew he was going to wear a uniform of our country, and there were a lot of young men and women who were inspired by what happened and wanting to step up and serve our nation under that terrible situation where 3,000 Americans were killed on our soil. And it is something that I nurtured in him through the years, and I was pleased he finally made the decision, and he did an Army ROTC program through Marquette University. But clearly now, as somebody who may be in a position of being in Washington, I want to make sure that we have a strong military, and I'm grateful that we have a president who supports our military. This is something that we had seen over the course of the 8 previous years, that the morale was down in the military. The amount of money and spending that was put towards our military had decreased. We finally have a president who now is standing up for these young men and women who bravely protect us. And I want to be a part of continuing that support.
You know, one of the issues listed on your campaign website is police and fire protection. As a United States Senator, what legislation would you support to keep officers and firefighters safe on the job?
Well, I certainly believe this is something that's important. These are decisions that should be made at a local level, so I would support grants that could be given back to the states so that local communities can make the decisions about the best policing and the best safety issues for our first responders, because they know what's best based on the different geographical issues, the demographic issues, excuse me. And so I think that's the best way. I believe in federalism and the concept of letting
I'll let you take a break to get some water.
The local communities make those decisions.
All right, as you get some water. One issue not listed on your website is where you stand on environmental issues. As a state senator, I know that you voted to repeal Wisconsin's Prove It First mining law. You passed new legislation that loosens regulations on mining companies. How would you characterize your stand on environmental issues, and would that continue if you were elected U.S. State or U.S. Senator?
I think we really have to find a balance. We have to find that balance between protecting the environment, but making sure that we're not going so far that it's affecting employment and affecting jobs. One of the things that I look at is that there's so much duplication in services between what happens at the federal government and what happens at the state level. We have an EPA that has regulations, and yet we also have regulations here in the state of Wisconsin through our Department of Natural Resources. And I would really like to see, not only as it relates to environmental issues, but I've put forth a proposal that says let's bring a lot of these agencies back to the states, bring more of the control back to the states. We're concerned about our environment. We're surrounded by beautiful lakes. We have 2 Great Lakes near us. We need to make sure that we are protecting those resources, and I think the people closest to those resources know how best to take care of them, and I want to make sure that we're not duplicating so much red tape and regulation that it becomes onerous.
All right, thank you. Our conversation continues with United States Senate candidate Leah Vukmir when we come back.